Welcome back to your Visionary Podcast. I'm your host, Visionary CJ, and today we have a special episode. We have a writer born and raised in Bronx, New York. She has an amazing story. We just spent some time, getting to know each other before this, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. She's a career and psychology major, and she's using her knowledge of psychology and her passion and gift of writing to just create a career and make a positive impact on the world. So I can't wait for y'all to hear from her. But before we do that, I want to remind you all what your Visionary Podcast is all about. This is a one and only podcast intentionally designed to push you forward towards the vision that you have created for your life. And if you don't have a vision for your life, this is a podcast to help you structure a vision to become the person that God created you to be. And with every episode, my goal is to tell real, authentic, and purposeful stories, not cap, but true stories to help you create a vision for your life and get closer to your purpose. A purpose where you're having a positive impact on the people around you and on the world. And I can definitely say that the guest today is doing that. And so let's welcome her, Gabriella.
Hi.
How are you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for coming on today. I'm excited for the world to hear from you. And hear, your story and just hear about how you are as a creator. And I'm just personally, I really love just creators and artists because I just feel like they have a special calling to impact people just through their gifts and through storytelling. And there's a quote that I love, and I usually start out the episodes with this, and the quote is, "Artists speak to the heart of the world." So with that being said, what is the message that you're sending out to the world?
Mm-hmm. So I think the message for me, which I think I was telling you earlier, that I had discovered was essentially like what I was trying to put into words. And I think the message for me is that there isn't a single story. I feel like part of like my writing and like where I wanted to venture to is that I want to be able to touch on everything, on every experience, and kind of like, I don't want anything or anyone to ever feel like, even like wherever I go in life, that like a single story of their life is like the entire one, or the longest story of their life is the entire one. I feel like that's the message I want to put out into the world. I feel like when we start looking at people, at places, at experiences as more than just one single story, then it's like we gain so much more understanding, so much more perspective. And I think understanding is so important because like if you really have to step out of your own perspective for that, to really understand something that you don't agree with, something that seriously makes you angry. There's like some touchy subjects, some touchy experiences. Like, for example, like even when a person, or let's say as a woman, you hear a man talk about their experiences as like not being the best man in their life, that is a very touchy like situation. It can get like a lot of emotion out of people, which is fine. But like, I think that's what I mean. It's like, that's a single story, that could be like a single story of like your life.
Yeah. But it's like, so it sounds like the goal is just to broaden people's perspective, to realize that we are multidimensional human beings.
Yes.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. And the way, that's just funny, like the way you talk, you can just tell that you're a writer and you just have the ability to critically think, which I find is really cool. And so on the subject of writing, like when did you first kind of discover that writing was your thing?
So funny enough, the reason that I discovered that I could write was because so just like putting that out there, I have bipolar disorder. And that's like something that like I was diagnosed with when I was like 15. But there are stages of it, or like just times where if I hit a really depressive low, at this time, it hasn't happened in a while, thank God, but like at this point in my life, it was like the lowest that I could have possibly been. And I lost my ability to really talk to people. I was escaping, I want to say. I was more into like just drinking and like being out of like whatever needed or required a conversation. And that kind of led me into a place where I was doing other things. And so I learned all in the same wrap of time that I could draw. And it was really like amazing what I could draw. And I had never done that before. And then I learned that I could write because I was so like, I was like crippling depression. And so I didn't realize that that was even good until I was in a new, I want to say like it was a job, but the whole job and like the entire team, they were all creatives. And so we had like a night where we all hung out and everybody was just kind of like sharing their work, whether it was like writing or singing or like art, everybody was sharing their work. And I sat there and I was like, oh, like I don't really have like a thing that I do, but like I do write occasionally. It's just not that good. And then I had read one of my poems out loud. And one of my homegirls that was there, she was like, that's ridiculous. She was like, I can't believe you. Like you just walked in here like you have like no skill and did that. Crazy. So it was at that moment that she had said it in front of everybody. She was like, hey, like we have a whole like open mic coming up, like for the company. So you have to perform. And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I don't even know. It's like, this is something that I do when I'm like a sad girl. And then she was like, no, you're doing it. And she kind of pushed me, you know, she was like, no, you're doing it because you just haven't seen yourself here. And so you don't think that you belong there. And wow. So I did do it. I opened the show and it got amazing feedback. Everybody was losing it over the poem. People still quote it. People still quote fragments of that poem, which I despise now because it was years ago. But and that's when I realized I was like, oh, I can do this. And then I did it for years, but I just never released it. And it wasn't until this year that I was like, you know what? Like you can't just hoard this.
Yeah.
You can't just hoard this, girl.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much I want to unpack there. You know, that was a lot. And the first thing that really stood out to me was just that through like one of your darkest moments, you found light through creativity and through your gifts. You know, you were able to just have that form of expression, and that brought some light to your world. And, you know, it brought like a new discovery, and then it showed you a new side of yourself.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. And then like I love the fact that your friend kind of pushed you out there, because I'm a huge like believer in just accountability, you know, especially from friends, and friends just holding you accountable for putting yourself out there. Because one of the things that I believe, like as writers and as creators, is like whenever we write something, it's not for us, it's a gift for other people. And so if we don't put that out there, then it's like we're being selfish because we have this great, amazing gift, but we're not giving it.
I agree. I feel like just like how we scroll and we see something very impactful, it could be like a quote, it could be like anything that you see and you're just like, yo, like that for this moment, just like it really did reshape my perspective in some way. You do that and you don't even know it. Sometimes you do that through conversation, you know? You just have a conversation with somebody. That happened to me yesterday. Literally, I was in bed with my best friend, and she was like, she just called out something that she called out the way that I said something about a particular subject, and she was like, you know, it's just the way you said it. I just feel like that kind of like manifests a different energy and tone to what the experience is, and like if you just like, you don't even have to say it like that, like it could really just be like this, and I'm like. You know what? It was way more intense than that, but it was just like, I was like, you know what? High key, am I manifesting something way worse because I just said it? When it wasn't even that, you know, when I can't even say that it was that. I was like, damn. You can do that through writing, through everything, through us talking now. Like, I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's just like communication. Like we're all, you know, like we all communicate. You know, even like I think all living things communicate, and so just different forms like writing, speaking, looking, standing. You know,
Great.
all of that.
Great.
Yeah, that's super dope. So, question. So, when you think about writing and just like your writing process, what activities do you participate in to help you like get into a writing mood?
I feel like I'm working on developing better ones. Um, I think, and I had this discussion, which we'll touch, I guess we'll touch on my friend Rudy in a second. So I feel like sometimes we fixate on like a technique to get into like a writing mood.
Mm.
And I think at bare minimum, what I can say is like making myself tea and just really sitting in bed, listening to real sad music, just to like get the feelings flowing. You know, not even sad feelings, but just to get myself vulnerable.
Mm.
That's like a way that I could do it. But next to that, I don't even think sometimes I enter a writing or create a writing space. I think I'm laying in bed sometimes and I'm about to go to sleep and I just have a thought and that thought turns into something else. And now it's 3 a.m. and I'm like picking up my laptop, like I gotta jot this down before I lose it. I think that's why writers also have a hard time sleeping.
Right. That's like some crazy in general. I love the fact that you mentioned vulnerability. Like talk about why that's important.
Yeah. So I think trying to I'm just an emotional person. I'm a very sensitive human being. I think I have like a tough layer, but like that's just who I am. And in order for me to get through every single day, not making everything an emotional, like turbulent situation, I have to like unplug from that and kind of just like move practically. So then touching into writing is like touching into that and then touching into the layers under and under and under. Because what I don't like to do is that I don't like to just sit down and write something and not feel it. Because then I feel like now I'm just decorating, a stanza or something. Like I'm not really, it's not meaningful. And if in order for it to be meaningful, I need to feel it. Like I need to feel it. It's important for me. Because if I put it out and I didn't feel it, then I don't feel like it's not gonna be good to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think there's some truth to that too, because it's like what we put into something is what we get out, right? And so if the feeling that we put into it is not pure and genuine, then how it's received, I feel personally won't be, pure and genuine.
Yeah, and I think getting into the vulnerable space is tough. It's tough if you're already like moving practically for most of the day and you're just not dealing with so much, like trying not to. It's tough. What I tell myself is, this is what I do. Oh, I grab wine. If I'm doing a late night writing situation, I grab wine. It always loosens me up. But I always tell myself, here we go into the rabbit hole every time. I'm entering the rabbit hole of emotions, feelings. I don't know what's gonna hit. I don't know what I'm gonna pick up from when I was 15 or from my dad. But everything is about. It's kind of like what I think of it. What I think happens is that I drink the wine, right? I feel nice. The tunes are flowing, and then every experience in my life is like hovering, like over it. I'm just like picking through, like what I feel like talking about. If I could put it, I could make it descriptive.
Yeah, I mean, I could perfectly like just imagine that. It could be a dark cloud for sure.
And that's where all the shadow work happens too. You write about something and you're like, oh, you felt that way about that for so long.
Wow, that's so good, and it's crazy because it also just brings back to the point because like there's light in that darkness. Wow, that's so good. And another thing that I want to hit on, my mind just kind of went blank. But when you were talking about vulnerability, right? So in one of my last episodes, I don't know if you saw it, I talked about crucial conversations and just how you have to be in a vulnerable state to be able to just ignite a conversation that may be awkward or may, be it may lead to conflict, right? And somebody actually like commented on that on YouTube and asked if I can make a video about vulnerability and just how to prepare for vulnerability. And I feel like that's such an important topic all the time, but really just right now, you know, as people are just starting to ask more questions about just the world. You know, I feel like right now people are asking so many questions about why things are the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a tough conversation because some people can feel targeted, right? So say if we talk about race, right? And like I work with a lot of white people. And so the race conversation is sometimes difficult because sometimes I feel like I'm targeted and sometimes they feel like they're targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it just really takes a level of vulnerability to just, you know, step down from that, like whatever pedestal you put yourself on, step down from that and just, you know, be transparent and open. And that's where like really the magic happens.
I think so. See, this is where vulnerability, ego, and pride gets tied in, and it's almost so. I feel like in order to have those very crucial conversations, you need to be vulnerable, but you also like need to understand that what you feel is being attacked is your ego and your pride, not your vulnerability. Your vulnerability is the beautiful thing here. That's what's going to allow you to understand, to listen, because you're being vulnerable. When you're already vulnerable, it's kind of like you're already open. So you're not looking at the other person in an open state as like a threat. You're trying to understand because you're already there. But you have to put your ego and your pride aside, especially for conversations that have to deal with race and something like that. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you say to the other person, they cannot tell you about your experience, right?
Yep.
So they need to be in a position where it's like, no matter how I feel about what's being said, this person's experience is very real. So And I have these conversations with my friends all the time, even when we get in disagreements about our feelings. It's kind of like I can sit there and think my friend is being dramatic, which I quite often think my friends are being dramatic. But I also know I'm very dramatic, so I know why I'm calling it. But in those spaces, they can sometimes be like, you know, but like these are my feelings right now. Very dramatic to you, still very much my feelings that I'm feeling that I'm dealing with. So it's kind of like one of those things you have to be in that position where you're like, you know what? You're right. In the sense that this is your feelings, your experience, and it's valid because it's a thing. It's not like it doesn't exist. And I feel like that's why these conversations go so south. It's the gaslighting. It's the, oh, you said this and you feel this way, but like this is what I know. And it's like, well, what you know now are three things, not just the two that you were about to bring up. You know my experience. You know this, the fact that you or the whatever it is that manifested in your brain that you feel like you know all those things, and now you know this. So this is not a let's use these two to fight this one. Let's understand all of this.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. And I feel like one thing that is really birthed from that is trust. You know, and trust. Oh my gosh, trust is so important when it comes to just relationships, right? Like you have to be able to trust someone for it to be a true relationship. I feel like, you know, and I feel like that's just one of the reasons why vulnerability is so important, because vulnerability does build trust.
I want to touch back on like what you said about the person asking you how to prepare yourself to be in a vulnerable state.
Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important because I do that. Like I had it's funny that you said it because I have a whole like strategy for myself that I feel like is a strategy that really like it definitely has a lot to do with the fact that I'm a psychology major and I know these things, but to be in a vulnerable state, to like prepare yourself for it, you have to are you safe in this space? You know, you want to ask yourself that question. Do I feel safe in this space? Is this a space that I can do that? And if you feel like it semi is, or it kind of is, identify why. And then this is what brings me to the second, because that's why people fear being vulnerable in the first place. It's the, what if I'm vulnerable and then I get attacked or I'm not understood? So I think at that point, when you're already concerned about that, what you want to do is validate yourself and understand, like, it's kind of like just not thinking that people won't, but just like being prepared to know that, like, no matter what happens past this point that I speak, I understand my point. I understand my feelings. And this can't be used against me later, because I feel like we fear that too. We fear the moment that somebody's going to just like, this is what I know about you, stab you. Like, but it's like, it doesn't have to be that way, because if you accepted it, and it's yours to feel, and you've already processed it, then you're already at that point. You don't need that validation anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So if you prepare yourself in those ways, it's kind of like, now we're here. Now we're at the conversation.
Yeah.
Now I can potentially like word this in a way where I'm just letting you know this is not a situation of blame. I will say where I feel like I would like to hold you accountable. You know? But
yeah. So it sounds like even from the person who's delivering, you know, or initiating the conversation, there's some I guess quieting of ego and pride on that person's side too.
everybody,
Yeah.
we all do it. We all do it. You're over. If I initiate the conversation, you're already there. Like, well, I'm about to get whooped with heavy information. If it's emotional, and I feel like that does definitely change. It sucks, but I feel like as a woman, you go through this because we're always thought to be these emotional creatures. Like we act, we think, we like operate on pure emotion all the time, which is not true, but that's how we're viewed. I had to learn at a very early age that when I'm speaking to men, as emotional as I may be, I have to unpack that. Now I have to figure out how I can word this for you. So you hear the logic in what I'm saying, and I can still be like, and the feelings have come from the state, like what I've just stated. Like, this is the feelings that I'm feeling. And it sucks. But I feel like I use that method with everybody. I use it with kids. I use it with my son. You have to break it down. I think learning how to break it down is the tough part. Because when you feel it, you don't have time for it. You're like, I feel this. That takes a certain level, I want to say like emotional discipline, which is hard.
And emotional intelligence.
Yeah, you need that one in order to get the discipline.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, love that. Okay, wow. I love how we just went on a whole, went off the board to talk about vulnerability, but it's so important, especially for writers and creators.
Yeah, it all ties in.
Yeah, 100%. And so back on the topic of writing, like what does your creative space look like? Right? Like where do you have to be physically and mentally when you're creating?
My favorite space, I want to say, surprisingly, is on the floor. I feel like I set up a really comfy vibe. So like I have like a lot of plans. It's like my life, pretty much being a mom. So I keep my room like really like open and kind of like light colors. I need that. But I'm usually like on the floor with my laptop, or I'm on the bed with my laptop. I think the cozy bed vibes are like, that's what my space needs to be. I need to feel like I'm kind of being coddled in my space. So I think it kind of like makes me feel a little safe, you know?
Yeah. What's the psychology behind that?
I've always had I grew up in very tight spaces. So even like the room that you see here, like for me, when I first moved here, this was a lot. It was overwhelming because I'm used to being in a tight space. And although I always wanted a big space, when I was in the big space, I was like I need to feel like a little closed in. So like when I'm writing, I need to feel like, so if I get on the floor, I'm usually like in one corner on the floor. Like I need to feel like a sense of like semi-closing in, not too much, just like close enough. It's a little weird, I'm sure.
No, it's not. I mean, hey, we all have our different like, I don't know, comfortability levels.
What's yours?
What's mine? Great question. So for me, like my writing space is my bed, and it's at a certain time. It's at night. Right. And I think there's something about the nighttime and being in my bed alone that just makes me vulnerable. Because I think there are like because my mind is most active at night, but I'm most still at night. And so it's
My
like
favorite word, still.
yeah, that's so important, yeah. And so I'm just so still, my mind's so active, and so man, just being in my bed, it allows me to be vulnerable, just unpack.
You know what? You hit it. You hit it hard. I'm like, wait, like that is why I feel like I write more at night because I'm still. The days already came and it's left, and we are here. And now we're about to be up and be groggy in the morning because we
Right.
to turn up and write this night. But it's nice. I agree.
Yeah, and I actually read something that like that's good for your just creative mind, to have a space where you're most productive from a creative aspect. Whether that be because I know some people they prefer to write in the mornings. Like I don't, I can't do that. But it's important to just know what your creative routine is. Yeah.
Thank you for that because I've literally been like trying my hardest to like start writing in the morning, and for dear life, I'm like, listen, this is not it. My body's rejecting it. It's like we have to think about class in like an hour. Like we feel pressure. And then, to add to like that alone, I think people this is the scary part, and this is why when you start sharing your work, you get real critical about your work, is because people think like you wrote this beautiful thing, and so everything you like produce is like this. But really, like the way we give ourselves crap for like writing a couple sentences and being like, what was that? Like what? Like, are you gonna send a note in class? Like, what was that? Like I do it because I'm like, yo, even I think like you should be able to produce great stuff at all times. No, sometimes it's gonna be like pages of like nonsense that'll speak to you.
Yeah. Wow, and that made me think of this thing. I was reading this book. I forgot what it was called, but it was by the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And it was about creatively like thinking big as a creator. And she was talking about how like creators need to have a sense of entitlement in terms of like in terms of like this is what they should be thinking, right? Like I'm entitled to work on this project. I'm entitled to put out this project because I am a creator. And there's something about that I think just breeds a sense of confidence, a certain level of confidence. And so that's something that I personally like am trying to work on since I like read that, because sometimes I do get in that space where it's like, this is not good, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, even if it's not good, I'm still entitled to produce this because I'm a creator. And I think that confidence, just pushes the needle forward.
That's right. I think, yeah. No, I go at it with myself. I'm like, we're not putting that out. Absolutely not. We're not. We're just not. And then later, like a month will go by and I read it again and I'm like, all it needed was a little tweak. You was doing a lot. I don't know why you were ready to never share this.
Yeah.
Do that. Also, the editing process is a lot.
For sure. So, wow, this has been good. So as we like get to end this, I want to ask you an important question. And it's going to sound similar to the first one, but it's different. And the question is like, what impact do you wish to have on the world, or what do you hope to accomplish?
I hope that I can like help provide like a sense of a validation for people that feel like their stories aren't heard. So what I'm learning through time and like my writing and like the responses that I get from people that read it or people that have seen me perform when I have performed is like in the moment that I'm sitting there and I'm writing this and I think it's just me, I feel these things and I'm so alone in that. It's like you learn that like so many different people, they might not have chosen this route or like they can't put it into these words, but they have felt very similar things. So I feel like that's kind of like the impact that I want to create, especially for women. for women of color. I just feel like those experiences, sometimes you need that little, like, you need to read that little thing. You need to feel like, oh crap, like that is real, you know, like that did happen. And now my feelings were valid. So I hope that like that's the kind of impact I have, is that people feel like not alone. And that, you know what, you can still feel these things, you can still have gone through these things, and you can still feel like a whole human being, not like fragments of like who you were before that, before these things happened.
Wow. Beautiful. I love that. I love that. Wow. And so, man, this was awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And so let the people know how they can find you. I know your Instagram is here, but you know.
Honestly, that is the absolute best way. I mean, my Twitter has the same handle. But yeah, I think that's definitely the best way. And my email is attached to all that. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, there it is. Thank you guys for tuning in. See y'all next time. Peace and love.
Bye.